Yeah, sometimes,
Recording's in progress.
sometimes there's a lag time in these things.
Yeah.
So,
Sure, yeah.
Well, welcome everybody. And thank you, Debbie, for setting this up.
Well, thank you
And
guys.
we have Andy Wilson is the main speaker today. And he is going to talk to us about the work that he has done in bringing down the CUP report and manipulating, trying to drill down inside of it to get the figures that would be needed to look at districts. And he's an expert on that. You saw Andy's bio, I believe, in the email that Debbie sent out. He spent years and years at Honda and worked with data. And Andy, you can fill in where I missed, but I have to tell you personally, I first met Andy and Donna in one of our Vouchers for Ohio Zoom meetings. Jim was on that, and I think Patty and Debbie, Andy was on it. And I was talking about our district, Pickerington City. This is my wife, Janie, here, munching down on some.
Sorry. Sorry.
Hey, it's all relaxed here, you know. So, and in a matter of minutes, Andy texted me Pickerington's data, yeah, and while we were at that meeting. And then so in a subsequent period, Janie and I have both gone to Pickerington schools and addressed the board twice. But before the second time that we had that Vouchers for Ohio meeting in between, Andy and I contacted him again and asked him if he would help me walk through how I can get Pickerington's data, which he did in a matter of two Sunday phone calls, I think maybe an hour and a half each time, which is gracious of him. And then I took that data and I put it in a letter that some of you may have seen in the invite. And that was one of many letters that we've sent to our board. And I'm unhappy to report to you that the response from the board is this. Nothing. And but it's not over. It's going to be a long process. And where we are sort of in a unique situation is that we have not lived in this community our entire lives. We've lived here for 8 years. We love it here. We think it's a great school district, but we're retired and we don't, you know, we knew everything you needed to know about Perry County, New Lexington School District because we both worked there for about 40 years. And we knew the politics, who you talk to, who, you know, who, but here we don't. And so consequently, even with this length of time, due to us being retired, we do have friends here, but as far as having the same sort of longevity that we've had in the past, we don't have that. Unfortunately, I'm not going to go to our church and talk about this. They wouldn't be too receptive. If you know what I'm saying. But anyway, it's all good. And Andy is going to have the first however long he wants to talk about his research and how he can help you if you're interested. And then I'm going to take a brief period after Andy to try to show you some things. And so Andy, welcome, and welcome everybody here. All
right. Well, thank you everybody for your interest and participation here. The first thing I'll show is the download from the Ohio Department of Education and Workforce website of what's called the CUP report, or the formal title is the District Profile Report. And it's got every public school district in the state, and it has about 60 data elements listed, all kinds of demographic information, all kinds of stuff about tax revenues and so forth. Student population of, and demographics, it's characteristics of the students, and also some of the characteristics of income and so forth. So out of those 60 columns, there's probably maybe only 15 or so that are really pertinent to the voucher fight. So, but 60 columns of data times 600 school districts is quite a bit of information.
Mhm.
So I am willing to work with anybody. If you send me I've got it set up so I can sort it down by county first to make it easier to find an individual school district. So if anybody wants any of this information and doesn't want to look it up themselves, Debbie has my contact information, and you can just reach out to me, and I'll put it together for you. So we'll start with the CUP report. So this, as you can see, it's a lot of information, and right now I have it sorted down. Well, this is the whole thing, and the top sort, you see Olentangy up at the top of it. That is the school district that would get the most money if they were funded at the same level as the vouchers. They would get $103 million more a year if the state funded them at the same level as they fund the voucher students. And here's this column here that I have in gray. I use $6,855 per student for the voucher number. So, and you can see the school districts are in all kinds of crazy orders. So I'm going to go through here. Since here's the information for Fairfield County, and up at the top of the list is Pickerington. And I can also just pull Pickerington out by itself. So you can see how quick and easy it is to get at this information. So the first column that we're interested in is how many students does the district have? And the state calls this the average daily membership. The school districts are required to report on a daily basis how many students they have in the classroom. So that's why it's 10,801.7 students. So over an 800 or a 180 day roughly school year, and the number of students and dividing it out by days. And that's why you don't have a round number. So the column here is the total property tax per pupil that the district raises. There's median income and the federal average income. Many school districts also have an income tax, which Pickerington does. So, and then there's the district's total operating expenditure per pupil. So Pickerington spends $13,705 overall average to educate each student. So, and then the state only chips in $57.86. So in Pickerington's case, the if they were funded at the 68.55 per student, they'd get $74 million, but the state only sends them about $63 million. So, and that the thing about that 68.55 is that's the highest number that the Ed Choice vouchers could possibly be, because it's a sliding scale that goes down to, as I think it's as little as 10% of the voucher amount. But that's for families that are making over 750% of the federal poverty level. So so that's where that one comes through. That's how that sheet works. Undo that. And you know, if anybody wants this file, I can certainly send it. Let's see, where to go. I'll worry about that later. So the next thing that I did, I worked with the Coalition for Equity and Adequacy of School Funding, and I had downloaded some information just on the fiscal year 24 voucher number, because that's when the Ed Choice voucher system really exploded. They lifted the income cap on it and made it, instead of available to only certain school districts or certain schools within a school district, they made it available to everybody. So the voucher count just exploded. And I was, you know, sent Bill Phillis some information on that. And he asked me to do a little bit deeper dive on it. So get back to that. So I did something similar for just the voucher count. So, you know, I talked earlier, I'm just gonna go ahead and right now this is set up for the district that has the highest total number of vouchers. So you can see the two biggest ones are in Hamilton County. But I spoke earlier about the percentage increase. So just change that filter. You get a divide by 0 if there's nothing. So here are the top, yeah, Avon Local, Indian Hill, Three Rivers. Upper Arlington is on the list with 2,600% increase, which was, you know, instrumental in convincing the board about that. So yeah, 6,000% increase. You see Indian Hill, which is a tremendously wealthy district in Hamilton County, went from having 3 vouchers to 189. And then, you know, Indian Hill went from 10 to 633. So
school vouchers.
well, anyway, we'll go back here and we'll do the same thing. We'll pull up Fairfield County.
If someone has a county or a school district that they want Andy to show, just raise your hand.
So, and then, you know, there's the detail on just Pickerington.
Okay, Linda has a question there. I mean, Lisa, I'm sorry.
You muted.
I was wondering about Dublin because I noticed that they did not join the lawsuit.
Okay. Dublin is up in Franklin County. Well, there's Dublin's number. They went from 80 to 656. So 720% increase.
Wow.
Unbelievable.
Upper Arlington really leads the pack.
Yeah,
I can almost guarantee you that those kids were already enrolled in private schools because our enrollment in Upper Arlington has actually gone up. So I can almost guarantee you that out of that 305, 95% of them were already going to St. Charles or someplace.
Andy, Karen here in Athens, Greece. Another question, that average daily membership count, that depends upon attendance, does it not? Because
yes.
it's like who's in class. So is there somewhere where there's a number for the basic enrollment? Like you might have 100 kids, but only 88 show up every day? Because it seems to me that school districts that are more impacted by working parents who were first responders and frontline folks during the COVID pandemic, those kids probably miss more school so that number for their attendance is depressed. They might be missing even more money if we knew what they should be getting if they could all get to school because they had childcare and supportive services.
Uh,
Josie.
yeah, there's probably a number somewhere. I'm sure the district, the individual district will keep that number
Even said that, you know,
You
because
need
they know
one
how,
more column.
well,
Yeah.
give some back.
yeah, they,
She's very interested in making it work if we can make it work. So,
Yeah.
as long as that would-
I'll quit sharing. So I'll just turn it over to Mike now unless anybody else has any,
Chris Glass might want to know where her district is. Chris, you want to unmute?
Olentangy,
Olentangy is,
they're stubborn.
yes. So. Delaware County,
Yeah, it's Delaware.
Olentangy is my, they've led the number, for, shortfall, versus their state funding and voucher
Mhm.
funding I've only done it for, I think, 3 years and they've led it every year. So, yeah, Olentangy went from 30 to 890, 2,866% increase.
3890.
So, and they've got, over half of the total voucher students in Delaware County.
Wow. Okay. Close.
Chris, you've tried to contact them, am I right?
Well, I talked to them. I went to the school board early on in this process. And they were, paid attention, they listened, and I even talked at that time about the fact of Delaware having a larger portion of senior citizens than some of the other places. and that we're a little bit more careful about the levies that we're willing to support. And I told them that, some of us had already been discussing it, that if they're not willing to fight for this, we may not be willing to vote for the levies. And for the first time in my life, I voted against a school levy.
Yeah,
What was the response to that?
I'm sorry?
What was their response to that? They have any-
Nothing. They didn't say anything.
yeah, Olentangy hosted a meeting that we were able to sneak into
Good.
about the school funding process, and we were talking with the superintendent. Bill Phillips was there. I don't know if Dennis Willard was there at the time, but a couple of the other people from the coalition were there. And the superintendent's response was basically, well, we're trying to work out a legislative solution.
Right.
Good luck with
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, and okay, so this is the legislative solution. They vastly expanded the voucher program and,
Oh, my.
And
hope
what
they're
was the term? I forget the term because I've been out of the loop for a while. What was the other term Ohio was using? Something about fair
school funding program.
school funding program. And that's something that Olentangy is arguing, or were arguing at the time, that that's what they thought that was more appropriate. They were
Yeah.
attentive. They thanked me for coming, and they gave me my 6 minutes. And
Yeah, and guess what the legislative solution to the fair school funding program was?
Right.
Because they expanded the voucher money so much, they had to trim back what they did in the fair school funding program. They
Mhm.
were going to fully fund it, but then they
Yeah.
said, no, we're going to have to cut it in half to pay for the voucher program.
And I think they're also very tied, and I don't remember all the names, but to some of the local politicians, and they're willing to
Yeah.
fight this.
Well, in particular, the state senator there
Right.
who's who
And the
hasn't
latest,
hasn't met a voucher he doesn't like.
the latest thing that they've done after Matt Huffman scuttled the fair
Yeah.
district plan and snuck it into the budget along with the expanded vouchers. Now the legislature has done the same thing this summer, on the budget, and they've allocated money for building private schools with taxpayer funds.
And that is criminal. I mean, that is just so against.
But it's wasn't through a bill, it was through the budget bill. So it was done on just the same way the voucher thing was done in the first place, under
It's
the radar.
It's an absolute violation of our state constitution.
It is. There's a
Yes.
provision, I think it's in Article 1 of the Constitution. It says, no person shall be compelled to support a religious entity against their will.
Correct. Correct.
I just saw that email yesterday, or an article on that, and I was shocked that really went under the radar. It was done very, very quietly and sneakily.
It doesn't
Oh,
surprise
it
me at
worked the
all.
first time, it worked when,
Their
like,
MO.
just do it
Yeah.
again.
Yeah.
I was watching for it too. I was watching for any mention of this and saw nothing until the ProPublica report came out.
Right.
It's
Really?
very-
You didn't see anything either? You
I did
didn't?
not see anything. Well, it wasn't tied to a bill, so you can't
Right.
look it up
Just
on a legislative site. It was part of the budget they didn't even, even oftentimes they'll have a budget bill and it'll be listed as a budget bill. I saw nothing, and maybe I didn't look hard enough. Maybe there was something in there, but I don't think so. And all of a sudden, ProPublica had a big expose.
That's what I saw last night. I was
Right, and then-
furious when I saw it.
And
I'm
I
a-
checked,
I'm a product of Catholic schools all the way through college, but I taught in public school. And I sent my kids to public school. And I just feel that the separation between church and state is dwindling so fast, and it's unfair. I don't want to support these private schools. I think it's unconstitutional.
It's definitely unconstitutional. It's-
Yeah,
I-
and
That's why we have the lawsuit going.
Right.
Yeah.
I checked with Honesty for Ohio Education because I was thinking, did I miss a bill here? And they had the ProPublica report there, but there was no bill listed. So I think they would have been on it if there had been, some kind of, explanation before this. So it was definitely under the radar.
well, and it's really distressing, and tells you something too, that when church leaders turn a blind eye to their education on what's constitutional and what's not constitutional.
Yeah.
To me, and David Pepper and Bill Phillips put this out all the time, that schools are saying, hey, you got to get this voucher. The leaders in the school and leaders in that particular church are saying, yeah, you really need to take advantage of that, rather than looking at the bigger picture of, hey, this is a violation of the Constitution. So it's like, it makes you think, okay, well, you're saying you need to follow laws, but if it's benefiting you, that law, you just sort of look the other way. And that, anyway.
I often wonder if a lot of Muslim schools started popping up all over the state, if people would be so happy about the vouchers, or Orthodox Jewish academies start popping up all over the state, would they be as happy to support the voucher program? I have a feeling that would not fly.
Well, there are Muslim schools that are taking voucher money, and there are many Jewish schools that are taking voucher money.
And I seem to remember one of Bill Phillips's columns actually had a parent that was Jewish that said, no, we're not doing that, to their administration. We're not going to take it because that's taking public tax dollars. If there was one column that,
Yeah, I remember that.
yeah. And so that kind of thing should be done, to me, by church leaders. But what's it telling us?
Not
But
gonna hear
then, we can look at a number of issues where there's a selection of like, okay, what we're going to get behind and what we're not going to get behind, or what we're going to, so.
Yeah,
And-
but when you
And
have
it
a,
is, Jim just put in the chat that South Carolina has declared the voucher system unconstitutional.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jim.
Wow.
yeah, but you've got that group, Center for Christian Virtue, that bought that building right across the street
Right.
from the State House, and spent $5 million refurbing it. And so obviously they're not hurting for money, and money is what drives the legislative process.
Yeah, and
How-
Patty,
will-
go ahead, Lisa.
When will the taxpayers realize what's going on? Like,
Good question.
how high are our taxes going to go until they realize what's going on?
Yeah, that's.
I mean, this has got to
question.
cost us an awful lot of money.
Yeah,
Be a lot of failed
It is.
levies. That wonder
well,
why.
I would think that inside the education community, and Andy talked about this, and it's been talked about, Jim, at Vouchers Heard Ohio meetings. When the state teachers retirement fund starts dwindling and is going to be affected by this, that everybody should be outraged and get active on this. But it's a good question, Lisa. I'm not sure. I mean,
I'm wondering why a lot more teachers, union leaders are not involved in this. I don't know if they know.
yeah.
I don't know.
How could you,
I don't know.
That's our question. Yeah, because it's publicized. Columbus Dispatch runs lots of editorials on this, and I don't know, people are still in the dark. Anyway,
I know the teachers union here, I'm not part of this system, but the teachers union here was, you know, they're so involved with their pension thing that maybe they're not paying attention to other things, but they really need to because it's going to affect them in the long run.
Well,
well, and
there's,
then speaking of that, shouldn't state teachers' retirement be alerting its members
Oh,
about this?
absolutely.
I would
Absolutely.
think you would get a lot more in their newsletter. Their newsletter is kind of, to me, not, it's like reading a phone book, but it's,
Oh.
you know, that should be a headline, you know,
Yeah.
Good.
but maybe we need to call.
I'm wondering if
all of
maybe
us.
that's a strategy is to begin to approach the teachers unions.
Yeah,
Maybe individual teachers are afraid that there'll be some retaliation from their boards.
Right.
If their
Yeah.
boards are going along with it.
Right.
But maybe the
Mhm.
union's a different story.
That's right. That's
see
an
that,
excellent idea.
and that whole fear of retaliation seems to go up the line, and it seems to have why some boards are just so silent on it. You know, one of Andy and I talked about this yesterday, you know, and he mentioned this today. You know, we not only have a property tax here, but we have an income tax.
Mhm.
Okay, so is it that our board, you know, not receiving any response, virtually no response at all from them on, I mean, we're talking at least 10 to 20 missives that we've sent and said, hey, you know, and gone personally to talk to them, and no follow-up. Jim, you wanted to speak, go ahead.
Oh, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Oh, you know.
Well, two things. Number one, in Upper Arlington, so we worked on this for 14 months. And Andy, I looped Andy, saw some of these monster emails I sent to our board, but I copied teacher union people in on these emails and the whole way, and they knew we were speaking up on their behalf, and they never weighed in. They never said anything. And so this idea of retribution or retaliation, I think that's very real.
I do too.
And we made sure that I was trying to guilt the board into knowing, hey, I'm not just talking to you, I'm copying these other people,
Yeah.
so just know. And I never heard a word from the teachers. That's number one thing. And the second thing I was going to ask you about Pickerington, and maybe Chris on Olentangy, is the biggest argument that we got from our board is, so Upper Arlington has a $110 million a year education budget. So we have 6,200 students. So it's 110 million. We only get about $5.5 million from the state every year. And so the biggest argument we got from our board is, we don't get much from the state anyway. Why should we care about vouchers? But what we convinced them of, and I did this by really tracking what our treasurer report in our board meetings is, we may only get $5.5 million of our 110 from the state, but that matters. It's an expensive school system to run. And even though we don't get much money from the state compared to the entire budget, it really matters because that money gets spent. And so if we lost $1 million out of that 5.5, even though it's a tiny fraction of our total budget, it's a big deal.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if you're getting that, or if the Olentangy School District is getting that, basically, well, we don't get that much money from the state anyway, why should we care? I'm wondering if you get those arguments.
We don't get a response at all is really the interesting thing. They do not respond. Even when Mike says, please respond.
I try to be polite.
Yeah.
You got, you know, at our meetings, you have said, emphasize, be polite. well,
We, and we don't get a response.
back at home, I'm pounding the table, but,
Oh.
But,
I know
um,
that.
yeah. You know, well, Andy mentioned this yesterday in our conversation, and we're talking generally about this too. Whether it is a small amount of your budget or not, the fact that this is and Lisa, the most recent Bill Phillips columns about the mix of church and state that is taking place now is a toxic mix, and how that's going to, that's something that is happening, and that's something that the violation of the Constitution alone, where we are subsidizing on a much greater scale now. I think that today's column was about how school busing has been the silent subsidizing over the years, and it has. People, okay, yeah, the Catholic kids are getting bused to their school through public tax dollars. Well, now it's like it's blown off, the lid's gone, so that should be a concern to everybody, that and why it's not, and that goes back to your original question, Lisa, how long is it going to take? I don't know. And I'm not, but I think what you're saying, Jim, many more people need to get involved in it. And
Yeah.
Go
Karen.
ahead, Karen, you have your hand.
Yeah, I have a stupid question. One of those, I haven't lived in Ohio long enough to remember. I mean, I've been gone so long. Upper Arlington, a couple of these other school districts have huge budgets and a small amount from the state. Is that because based on your student population, you would have this smaller amount allowed? Or that's what you asked for? But the parents in that area being able to afford the property taxes have gone ahead and given the levies so that you could have a bigger budget and a stellar school system in that area. That is, why does Upper Arlington get so little compared to its huge budget?
Because
And
we're
might it
wealthy.
I'm sorry?
It's our wealth.
Because you're able to support it yourself and not ask for it from the state.
It's
Which
not-
seems nice and fair, but that would also, that would also be a consideration, would it not? For parents and for taxpayers, like Chris was saying in her Olentangy district, not everybody is upper income and can afford to pay huge property taxes.
Right.
And the problem is that the separation of church and state and constitutional considerations are really important to people like us who have actually read Constitution and who value those particular standards. But I'm afraid that money talks is probably what drives most voters in a district.
Yeah, the Article 6, Section 2 of the Ohio Constitution starts out with the General Assembly shall, by taxation or otherwise, provide for a thorough and efficient system of common schools. Doesn't say, that's the only place in the Ohio Constitution that requires the state legislature to fund anything.
Yeah.
And if you interpret that literally, it says it's the state's responsibility to fund schools. Nobody else's, not local taxpayers. It's the state's responsibility.
Which is why the original decision way back when was declared us unconstitutional in the way we funded our schools.
The Roth versus the state of Ohio.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does seem that the state should somehow level things out so that they help the poorer districts as well as those able to help themselves. But at the same time, for the taxpayers and their consideration, and they kind of la-di-la, well, I'll just keep paying taxes. They might want to think about that. I mean, it depends on who you're talking to, maybe, which part of the argument you want to employ.
Well,
That was the way the Fair School Funding Plan was supposed to work until it got hijacked by the voucher program. It was supposed to be constitutional if it had passed through regular channels. But Matt Hoffman just would not bring it to the floor back in 2022 And so he said, don't worry, we'll put it in the budget for 2023. And conveniently, he snuck the voucher thing in there. And so it has resulted in not being able to actually do the fair school funding plan that would have been, it had broad bipartisan support, it would have passed.
And every
Except for
time
that.
they do something like that, you get another expansion of the group of people who have an interest in allowing them to stay in power and keep on playing the same game, which is unfortunate.
Yeah,
Yep.
absolutely. Oh, Chris,
I just had a quick question, a little bit off this, but do we know what percentage of private schools are not religious related?
I don't know.
that's a good
It's pretty low. I
Yeah,
have
I'm,
most of the, well, there are certain private schools that don't accept the vouchers at all. They refuse to accept them because they don't want to have any of the responsibilities that go along with the few responsibilities that go along with taking state money.
right.
I
Like-
mean,
Like maybe paying some taxes themselves.
Yeah,
yeah, well, they, you know,
And-
the scarier thing about this voucher expansion thing is that money is not only not audited, it is not auditable. The state auditor cannot go to the Catholic schools and say, we gave you $200 million last year. How did you spend it?
Mhm.
You know, in a state, public school district is accountable for every stinking penny that the state gives them.
Mhm.
And they're audited line by line by line every year.
Right.
And so we're giving out these billions of dollars, and we're gonna have another, I'm sure we're gonna have another ECOT scandal out of it.
correct.
Yeah.
Yes, Chris.
And I wonder how, the thought just flew out of my head. How,
It'll come back.
never mind, go on.
No, it'll
If I
go.
think about
It'll
it,
be-
I'll
it'll be back.
holler again.
Just when you think of it, blurt it out.
So Mike, if you want to get back on track.
Oh, I
I'll-
know what it was. And I think I mentioned this at one of the vouchers phone calls. I don't know how we can't go backwards. I understand that, and we don't want to go backwards, but isn't there a way to change how this is administered? I mean, is that another tact we could take, in that in order to get a voucher, you must not already be in a private school?
Well, you know, Bill Phillips
The first
sort of
one, right?
addresses that in saying that as soon as and goes back to Lisa's comment, you know, when are people going to wake up? But as soon as they
Right.
realize what's happening, then, you know, the public will demand that private entities become more accountable. But when? I mean, that, you know, it's pretty, yeah. Debbie.
There are several bills that the Democrats have put forward in the legislature that attempt to provide for some accountability. They're going nowhere, which is not surprising.
Right.
But they might, with a lot of public urging
Yeah.
to make the private schools accountable. There's several different kinds of bills like that would counter some of the damage that vouchers have done.
Yeah. Hope so.
Yeah.
Well,
Lisa's
Go
Are
ahead.
any of you getting, I've kind of been out of the loop this year, so pardon me if I'm overstepping, but when I talked to Olentangy, it was long before this got super active. And there was no question answer. Have any of you been able to get before the boards and actually have a conversation with them?
We
Okay,
have.
it's just letters and asking to speak at the board meetings.
and thank you for coming. You know,
Yeah,
thank you for your,
Yes, thank you. And everybody, I mean, when I went there, everybody came up to me afterwards. It was the new superintendent's first week at the school. I forget his name even at this point, but he was going around the room introducing himself to everybody before the meeting actually started. But after the meeting, I think all but one of the school board members and many of the audience members came up to me, because most of my presentation was centered on the need for public schools and separation of church and state. So
Yeah.
most people came up and said, oh, I'm so glad you said that. And, thank you for saying it. And thank you for, coming. So the reaction I got one-on-one was a lot better than the reaction from the group as a whole. And that's sad.
Mhm.
I'll give you some insight as being a board member on the process. The purpose of the board meeting is to conduct the business of the board.
The school, right.
So, and they do allow a time for public comments. They're
Right.
able to limit that time per person and overall time. Because if you get into a big discussion, you can't get to the business
true.
that you have
That's
at
true.
hand.
That's true.
So that's why they don't do a question and answer type thing at a board meeting.
Yeah.
But could you request a panel to meet with some people?
Yeah, you can you can request to meet individually with the board members, or you can only do a maximum. If you have a board of 5 people, you can only meet with 2 board members at one time.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's
Sunshine.
otherwise it's a violation of the sunshine laws.
Mhm.
If you have three board meetings, if you have the quorum of a board in any one place, that's considered to be a meeting, and it has to be noticed.
Ah,
and
okay.
all kinds of other things. So
Just if I can,
Okay, Jim.
well, just if I can give any advice to people, especially in wealthy districts, the constitutional argument, no one cares.
Yeah.
They're going to care about the money.
Mhm.
How does it affect us? And this might be the composition of our board, but they don't care about the statewide implications of this. They don't care about separation of church and state. How does it affect the money that comes into Upper Arlington? So what we did over the course of 14 months is we hammered the board with polite emails. We had that event we had at the library. Mr. Phillips was part of that. Charlie Wilson was there. David Pepper was there. And we spoke at board meetings often, and we had private meetings with the board. Finally, we got television news to show up at Upper Arlington board meetings 2 straight times. And then Husted did his arrogant, mouthy letter, but it took all of that to basically shame our board into discussing it at all. They would have buried it if not for the television news and our constant pressure. And I imagine in most wealthy districts, that's the case, is that if you cannot demonstrate to them how it's going to financially hurt the district, and this is why I made the statement earlier, our budget with 6,200 students is $110 million. Almost 80% of that comes from 85% comes from our property taxes. Get a tiny bit of federal aid and about $5.5 million of state aid. We proved to them on paper by using our treasurer's report information that even though it was only $5.5 million out of 110, it mattered because it's so expensive to run our schools that any dip and even that small percentage from the state would really hurt us. So I hope I'm making my point here is you have to be able in these wealthy districts to get your board to go, how does it affect us? If you can't show us that we don't care about what's happening in the rest of the state, and we don't care about separation of church and state, is it going to affect us financially?
I think you nailed it for Pickerington.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I think Lisa had something.
Yeah, Lisa?
Yeah, I was curious as to whether, as people find out more and more about the voucher program, if the public stops approving the board, levies and, things that you have to vote on, if the board will be more responsive, if their budgets keep going down.
But that's,
People refuse to.
That's a
okay.
good point. That's a good point, Lisa, but then how long, again, the amount of time it takes for people to feel
Yeah.
that,
Yeah, oh, yeah.
you
Is
know, and
Is ProPublica, are they doing a, oh, lost the word. Are they doing a lawsuit?
Republica. I don't-
ProPublica, I read the article very quickly last night, but I didn't know if they were starting a lawsuit.
I don't
haven't
think
heard
they
that.
would be in that position to do that.
Yeah.
I think it would have to come from folks in the state. I don't think that would come from them. I think one thing about the boards that this is just what I was gathering from my attempts to talk with Rocky River folks. Is where I went to school growing up, and my particular school district is Worthington, and they're part of the lawsuit. So I thought, well, as an alum, I'll try to approach the Rocky River School District up in Cuyahoga County, and they have not signed on and will not sign on. And I suspect in that case, aside from the fact that it's a very wealthy district, it's very similar to Upper Arlington, but also they have a number of private schools that are in the area, including parochial schools. And I suspect that the board members don't want to alienate people who are going to be voting for them. And it may be that for instance, maybe election is coming up and they're afraid that if they vote for this, the thing that would hurt vouchers, that they would get kicked off the board. So it may be partly self-interest on the part of some board members that they're looking at their own position and they don't want to alienate their voters.
Well, these are all really, really good points. And I'm going to show you a couple of things before we wrap up today. If you don't mind, I'm going to try to share. See, I have to get back in here and do the sharing. Hang in there a moment. Okay, this is when we went to our board the second time, I asked, can you see that? The
Yes.
Andy Wilson formula for calculating the average maximum voucher amount per student. Before I came up with that figure, I thought, or before I used that figure that Andy gave me, I thought, well, I better be able to tell how we arrive at that figure, or he comes up with this figure. So he basically, and Debbie will have this if people want to look at it later. I'll send it as an attachment to you, Debbie. He counts, that there are 13 grades. Okay, there are 13 grades from K to 12, and grades K to 8 are. He uses the fraction 9 out of 13, or the decimal 0.69, and from grades 9 to 12, that's 4 grades divided by 13. You get a decimal 0.31. The state arrives at this figure, 6165 is K-8 voucher amount. And for 9 to 12, it's 8407. The 13 grade level, he throws this assumption in there that the 13 grade levels and are equally distributed with students in each grade. So the way Andy comes up, now his figure was 6855, I rounded it up. The maximum ed choice voucher amount is 0.69, that's the K to 8 times 6165 plus the 9 to 12, 0.31 times 8407. That's his formula, the Andy Wilson formula. and it equals 6860.02. Okay, that'll, if anybody's interested, I felt I needed to know that. If nobody asked me, you know, that no one's asked, but I think that's a good way that he uses 6855, and mine ended up being 6860. Let me go to, I've stopped sharing just for a moment, and let me try something else here. Okay, I wanted to briefly, and before we conclude, walk through the steps that Andy taught me. Can you see those? No, not yet. Wait a minute. I have to share again. There's a lot to think about. I don't have a tech guy in the back room. I just go, hey, share. Okay, let's go to that. Share. Okay. The steps in, now let me move that up so you can see it. Maybe I better close this one. Get that out of the way so that's not interfering. I can't. Okay. Let me try that again. Can you see this? Steps in,
Yes,
steps in accessing ODE cup report. Well, I've got 10 steps there, and I made them bigger. What I'm going to do is just walk through it. And if you, Debbie will have that. If you want to do it on your own, you can do that. Okay, but let me just do that quickly. Now I want to share, let's see, Google Chrome. I don't know, can you see this? Can you see?
nothing yet.
Nothing yet. Now I have to go back to that stop sharing. Okay, hold on, group, please. Okay, now I have to share that. Okay, now I'm good. Okay, so you can see the title bar here, Google.
You
Everybody
just
see?
did Google,
Yep.
yes.
Okay, so up here you just do a search. You can do ODE cup report, and it comes up because I've gone there before. And then can you see that? District profile reports, cup report. Everybody see that?
Uh-huh.
Okay, so let's go to fiscal year 2023. That's in these steps 1 through 10. Okay, so when you get to this page here, Andy taught me to go down to the middle of the page, and you click here to access the report. Okay, and then, okay, it downloads it, and I have to open it. Let's see if it will. Yeah, here it comes. Can you see this? The district profile report 4?
Not yet.
Okay, I have to stop share. I have to share again. Where's my back room, people? Come on. All right, share. Okay, now you can see what downloads. Okay, district profile report 4. Okay, now Andy says on a PC you can type Pickerington in there, but on this Mac that I'm on, I have a drop down. You could go to any district you want. Okay, now watch what happens when I get to Pickerington. See, they're all in there. Okay, so just give me a moment here. We got what, 600 school
Yeah,
districts? in the-
613 or 611, something like that.
There's Pickerington Local School District, Fairfield. Now look how that populates that for you. Okay, can everybody see that?
Yes,
Okay, the first thing I wanted to look at was item number 3. And that's our ADM, 10,801.67 in fiscal year. I think I can highlight it in yellow. Yeah, in fiscal year 23, we had 10,801.67. Okay, the next thing there's a whole bunch of information in here, but I'm going to drop down to item number 46 and click on it. And I'm going to highlight it in yellow. I don't know if that'll help you or not, but okay. But see, can you see that figure? It might be pretty small. 58, 5785.51.
Yep.
That's our state revenue per pupil. Okay, now those are the only two things that I could pull up, I would be interested in to go back to, and in the steps, I've asked you to write these two figures down. So I'd say write down that, the 10,000, make it bigger, our ADM 10,801.67, write that down, and then write this down. Okay, that 5785 state per pupil. And then you're going to do a little math. You're going to multiply those two figures, and that's what the state's giving you for your district. Okay, then you can go to Andy's figure of 6855 and multiply your ADM times that 6855, and that's the amount that's being given away for vouchers. Okay, the average amount, the average maximum amount. So basically, that's all you have to do to, I mean, a quick way, I think. And I wrote down some steps. The last thing that I'm going to do is one more thing I want to share. And I put this here, and it may not be something that you'd be interested in doing. Let me move you over here. Okay, I'm going to go back to Zoom call. There you go. Zoom. Let me stop sharing. Okay. There's one more thing that I made, a sample letter, and you could, no, that's not it. Yeah, it is. Okay. All right. Let me move that up. And this is the last thing I'm going to tell you. Okay, and show you. Now I have to do the sharing again. So go back here and share this document. And Debbie will have this too. I made like a template to, if you wanted to email our board, there's all their emails. Can you see that?
Yep.
Okay. And a letter, and you can edit it. You could send it to our board, and I've stated it so that you're from another district, and you notice that your district, maybe your district has already joined, and you're just wondering why Pickerington hasn't. Now, whether you'll get a response,
You won't.
it'd be just really wonderful if you would, and you could say, "Hey, Mike, they talked to me." Hey, Mike and Jane, what's with you two, huh? Anyway, or you could edit this whole thing to say to your own, and Debbie, your own school board, or as Andy said, and this is a very important point, write your school board. You could edit it to say, "Thank you for joining the Vouchers for Ohio." So, like, use it any way you want or don't use it. But that's the last thing I have. Let me
I would
stop.
say that sending a thank you email, which took me about 5 minutes to send to the Worthington School Board, it got a huge amount of response. I couldn't believe it. Like, it took
Good.
me, 2 minutes of effort, and they were very appreciative, and there were a couple of new school board members who, that was encouraging them to continue to support the voucher lawsuit. So yeah, if your school district is already signed on, then give them an attaboy and
Yep.
make sure they keep going.
That's right. Very good.
Yeah.
Yes, Lisa.
I have a question about the funding. Is the funding come from a state fund or a district fund? Like,
It's,
where is that a state pool?
yes, it's one giant pool of money, on the order of about $13 billion a year. So, and the sources are state income tax and state sales tax.
Okay.
So the legislature, they get all this money in and they say, okay, we're gonna K through 12 education. That's the only line item it is K through 12 education is $13 billion or whatever the number is. It's roughly that. And out of that is where the voucher money goes and where the money for the local school district goes. There, don't let anybody tell you that there's a separate line item for vouchers. There is not.
Yeah, that's a regular.
But this really affects everybody throughout the state because
Yeah.
we're all,
Yes,
it's coming from everybody's
That's right.
pockets.
Correct.
Hey,
yeah,
Andy,
and if somebody does, if a legislator tries to tell you that, tell them to check with the, what is it, the Legislative Service Committee,
Right.
and have them show you where there's a line item for vouchers.
Jim?
Thank you.
can I real quick?
That's something.
Yeah, Jim.
Andy, are you able to answer the question I put in the chat about I know the final figures probably aren't going to be available till October, but can you if you don't have it now, you can send it to me an email. I'm interested in the latest figures on the breakdown of each voucher type and what
Okay,
it cost this last school year.
A Cleveland Scholarship, the John Peterson Special Needs, Autism, Ed Choice Expansion, and Traditional Ed Choice.
Any information that's on the ODE website will only be for fiscal year 23. So they haven't released the final numbers for 24 yet.
So you don't have anything?
No, we've got some, Steve Dyer put some preliminary numbers together on it, but they're only his best estimates.
Okay. And if I understand you correctly, when you do this, you're a little more conservative than he is, correct?
It varies, you know, some,
Well,
Some-
anyway, my larger point is when you do get these figures, I'd love to have them because as anyone knows who is successful at getting their district to join the vouchers lawsuit, it's year by year. And so your school board could vote it down next year.
yeah,
So we were successful in Upper Arlington, but our school board, if they so choose, could vote to back out of it next June. And so I want to be able to keep the pressure on our school board. And then I also like to post a lot of this on Facebook too. So is it, when I see figures, is that because some journalist dug hard and got figures?
it's
Like every
prob-
once in a while, I know I'm babbling here, but there's every once in a while you'll see a good report in Cleveland.com or some journalist has dug up the latest figures and they're usually behind. But as far as I could tell, back in June, the two Ed Choice categories looked like they were going to hit the $800 million mark.
Yeah, that's pretty much the numbers that Steve Dyer has come out with.
Okay. Well, I apologize if I'm talking too much. To just know that
No, you're not.
I want to stay on top of these numbers.
Yeah.
So that I can keep the heat on our school board. And I think everyone here would benefit from knowing.
Yeah, very good point.
And I think it's also important to get people to know that the lawsuit does not affect the autism and John Peterson special needs.
Right.
Or the Cleveland.
Or the Cleveland. So you want to be able to have some intellectual self-defense there and saying, no, we're not going to cut vouchers from kids with autism. It's the Ed Choice categories.
Yeah,
I have a question about the lawsuit. I know begins November 4th, I believe.
Yep.
yes.
And I'm assuming it's going to go on for quite a long time. and that may eventually involve the Supreme Court, which is why our Supreme Court choices are very important. But assuming, let's say just for kicks, that this is found unconstitutional and, you know, it starts going away, then what do they expect might happen, or how, you know, what happens then? Or does the sign on from all the different districts, do they have to keep signing on until the lawsuit is concluded? Or is it after, I mean, for many years after, to pay the attorneys, you know, to pay the bill?
Well, there will be attorney's fees involved until, and it's pretty much a given that it will eventually make it to the Ohio Supreme Court. Because it's an even bigger issue really than DeRolf was.
Yeah.
So it'll go through common pleas and then it'll get appealed, and if it makes it through the first appeal, then it'll go to the Supreme Court. So the membership in VHO is just a continuing thing, and actually it's a two-part membership, because there's membership in just the Ohio Coalition for Equity and Adequacy of School Funding, and that's 50 cents per student, and that's just for the district to support what the coalition is trying to do. And then there's another $1.50 per student for them to participate in the VHO process. So. And,
So
yeah,
that would continue well past, let's say the Supreme Court strikes it down as unconstitutional. But I'm just guessing there'll be a lot of attorney's fees after that the schools might have to kick in for.
Probably if the Supreme Court strikes it down, and the remedy that we're seeking is an injunctive decision that says you have to stop. It's not seeking a legislative solution like DeRolf was. It's saying, no, you have to stop. Of course, what happens, you know, what kind of a constitutional crisis we'd have if they just basically thumb their nose at the Supreme Court.
Which they've done before.
Yeah.
Lisa?
Would the legislators just change the Constitution? Do we have to okay that, or can the
Yeah,
legislature
we have to vote on that.
have to vote on that?
Yeah.
And, but then they do a lot of unilateral, like the whole workforce educational thing, that should have been a referendum. But it's happening, you know.
Yeah.
The Board of Education. Anyway. Well, you guys, we're nearing the end of our time. These are excellent questions. You know, we got to just keep chipping away, and, you know, congratulations, Jim, again, for Upper Arlington. That's huge, because truly that's probably the wealthy districts. I mean, and even though, I don't know, Andy, are we considered a wealthy district, Pickerington?
I'd have to take a look at it.
But that's probably, and I kind of alluded to it a little bit about the property tax. The property around here is so much, you know, I mean, it's really valuable. And so there's a lot of tax money coming off that, plus the income tax, you know, so, but to be able to convince a board that 5 million, which to all of us is like huge, but, you know, when you're talking, well, we get 60 or 160 million or whatever, you know, to operate, you know, to convince them of that's major.
Well,
Wow, just
5% cut.
yeah, it took 14 months of nonstop work and a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
So I would love to sit with anyone in a wealthier district and help them with some strategy, but it is not easy. And if you have, like, maybe Deb has a great school board in Worthington. Our school board, we had some problem children.
Mhm.
I mean, we had some people that did not care,
Yeah,
and it took relentless pressure.
right.
That
Robert?
might have happened in Worthington too. I don't know if you remember, some few years ago, Nikki Hudson, who had been school board president, she really rallied for or worked on a DEI program, and then she got rid of resource officers, and that was a very controversial decision. So there was a big attempt to have somebody kick her off the board. They slandered her and her kids who were going to the district, she got threatening letters. However, she and her husband are both lawyers. They decided to sue this group that was funding the guy that wanted to run against her to unseat her. He was unsuccessful. His name was Brian Steele. He was at the bottom of the barrel as far as votes went. He did not succeed, even though he had all that money poured in. So this meant that our board was amenable to continue with vouchers, which Charlie Wilson, who's been involved in it for a long time, was a champion of that. So because of the nature of our school board, we're able to continue because they understand the importance of it. But this might have been derailed, and that could happen to any district. So that's when you said about it's a year by year thing, your composition of your school board might change. So a thank you note to the school board that's doing it may have an impact if there's new school board members coming on who might not be so amenable.
Absolutely. Very good. Well, any final thoughts for the?
This has been a great discussion. Thank you so much, Andy, for joining us. We really appreciate it. You're welcome to join us anytime.
Okay.
We about every 2 weeks, and the next time we meet, we're going to hear from Zachary Parrish, who is the guy that is instrumental in Parents Against LifeWise. I'm in conversation with a couple people from Honesty for Ohio Education, hoping to get them on there too. We may have to do it in separate meetings, I'm not sure, but that's a big deal. It's folding into this whole church and state separation. So it comes on the heels. It's really a biggie. So that'll be the next, not this coming Thursday, but the following, and you'll be seeing more about that. I've got Zachary on board now, and hopefully I'll get somebody from Honesty as well, but we'll see. But also thank you so much, Mike.
Yeah.
I knew you guys would do a great job of this, and really appreciate the deep dive into the data and how to get to it. It's really important. So again, Mike, as Mike said, when I send out the video recording to everybody on email, I will be sending all these documents, attachments, so that you can see what they've done and find the things out for yourself. And then Andy has graciously offered to be in touch with anybody who needs a walkthrough. And Mike pointed out he was Johnny on the spot and got right to it as soon as he was asked. So these are great resources, and really, really appreciate it. And thank you, Jim, for joining us today. And you're welcome anytime, but it's good to hear a success story to keep everybody going.
Yes, it is. Hey, and yeah, I want to thank Andy and Jim and Lisa. I know not to Patty and Chris and Karen and Debbie, all of you. Thank you. And Andre, you're in the background somewhere. So thank you very, very much. It's been a great, as soon as we hang up, I'll go ahead and get this over to Debbie.
Sounds
So
good. Thanks
have
so
a good
much.
day. I'm going to stop recording now.
Okay.
So goodbye to everybody. Thank you very, very much.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everybody.
Thanks so
Thank
much.
you.
Have a good day now. Bye-bye.
Yeah.
Bye.
I'll stay on until you're done.